Unless there are other questions for clarification, then I think we move to the last country that was done in the scoping study, to India. Kurian.
So much I will basically focus on how a large ongoing open-ended employment guarantee program of the government can be used to, focus and encourage MUS investments and how that convergence can happen. So basically, that's what we have discussed earlier. That, if you look at the investment in water sector in India, it was mainly done by either household or by community and also by government, of course, just like any other country. But it was largely focused on, multiple uses, because there was no exclusive water for drinking, exclusive for cattle, exclusive for other things. It was largely for all purposes. And these investments, if it is within the household, because every household has got a homestead, and within the homestead, maybe whatever be the land available, they will use it for all the purposes, irrigating and earn income, and like that. That was structure. And if it is a community, then again access was there for all. And then subsequently, it all changed back in a way. And this case study is from Kerala. Actually, in the state of Kerala, we have around 3,000 millimeters rainfall per annum on an average. But unfortunately, because of the undulating terrain, every 3 to 4 months it gets actually, very acute scarcity of water, because there is no harvesting and recharge of groundwater and things like that. And these small states of 6.5 million households, we have 4.5 million open dug wells. That means on an average, every 2 households or something like that, we have a well. And this well is typically around 6 meter dia and 10 to 15 meter deep, as you know. And it has got a tremendous, it actually takes water not from the subsurface, actually aquifer. It's again taking water from the subsurface flow, which is being carried. So it has a tremendous potential of recuperating approximately 10 to 15,000 liters a day. So that is the capacity. But unfortunately, over the period, because the government has said that no, they're all going for improved piped water supply and things like that, and society has changed, and most of the wells are actually getting disuse and never being used very effectively. So it was neglected, and actually till maybe for if you look back at the investment, around 55% of the cumulative sector investments in drinking water alone or even other things comes from the household structures in these wells. See, 4.5 million, actually around 95%, 98% are households individual investments. So that's actually only the community and government investments. But another interesting feature is that when the piped water supply came, they neglected open wells, but unfortunately there is no regular, dependable, reliable supply for drinking water. So actually now they use both in a way, and then invested in coping cost in around approximately $500 per household. They have invested in creating pumping and storage structures and like that. And so in India, we personally feel that MUS has absolute advantages. One is to augment source sustainability, because as I was always saying that all these structures, if we can conserve, rehabilitate, manage it well, it will all add to the availability of water. In a way, I must say, an aquifer is the best MUS, because everybody draws water from the aquifer, whether it's industry, anything. So it depends on sustainability. And it is basically cost effective, absolutely cost effective in terms of production and storage when compared to other forms of supply. And it encourages also from the household investment, because if the other thing actually, because the government is investing, the piped water supply, actually the government is investing in a heavy way, but it encourages household investment. It encourages again convergence. If you look at the MUS and then IWRM or whatever be the way, and it also leads to a reversal, because unfortunately, because of the disregard and neglect on resources where MUS is focusing, it is, though the pipes are there, everything is there, water is not available. So basically there is now a question of actually whether the investment has really gone to that use. The real challenge is now, because earlier there were only few people, water is plenty and quality was not an issue. But now water quality is a major problem. So probably for drinking purpose, there are water quality protocols and which are to be adhered to, and the design criteria is there that we may have to have an independent also treatment and all those stuff, which will be, I mean, maybe costly, but we need that. And second is the competing users and the issue of regulation. And barriers to scale up. Most one, as we all discussed, I didn't want to focus too much on only the institutional budgetary fragmentation on that, and there is nobody actually looking at the source and water. People are investing in different things and mainly focusing on storage and distribution than on augmenting. So where does the water come? And nobody actually asks. Everybody is now focusing on the other thing. And then we have the vertical accountability mechanism, which again never encourage convergence. And there are very huge investment, I mean, incentive for high cost infrastructure, obviously, because you can, politically they can say we did a huge dam, and then bureaucracy and other people, they can say that no, there is a lot of investment and the contracting is there, and everything looks very sort of a romantic in huge investment rather than small investments. And then the convergence mechanism is very weak and modalities are not very strong. That also acts as a barrier. And this is supply drop-driven models also acting as a barrier. And I said water quality protocol and design criteria, and demand for higher service level and pipe to water supply. Because even in the rural areas now, people are asking, you are providing 300 LPCD for urban, so we also need 300 LPCD, and why should we walk and take water where you are actually getting it in your home? So, and this is again a very typical institutional thing. I have never added much more because there are 3, 4, 4, 5 institutional structure can be added into the water. So the whole confusion, just to show that how this is all divided into different. And for scaling a pathway, one prerequisite is that we have to design and define what is the basic role of the government. Whether the basic role of the government is to provide access to adequate and quality service level for all, or we will provide pipe to water supply for all. I personally believe the question is actually to ensure access to quality water. I mean, then the pipe to water supply, improve service level, all these are again a question of that, no, whoever can pay and need for that beyond a basic level. And another thing is actually a sector-wide approach which can really scale up the MUS in India, but it's not actually happening. And interdepartmental or programmatic convergence, that is also not happening. The new opportunity is actually decentralized, ability-driven, decentralized, as John was saying, that convergence, linking Mahatma Gandhi, National Water Program, Environment Guarantee Program. Just to give a, overview of the NREGA, its magnitude, it started in 2006 in India, and it spread across the country in 2008, and it provided 100 days of guaranteed wage for anybody who is asking for a job. That is the thing. And cumulative investment, you will be surprised that now the households covered is 40.8 million households. That means it's actually goes, and the percentage created is 10 billion man days created or women days created so far, and the budget allocated is 1 billion Indian rupee, and then total expenditure is so much. So just magnitude of the program, it is something absolutely amazing. And then the attraction is that 50% of this investment is essentially going to the water sector, because 50% of this employment created are actually going to the water. Maybe renovating a canal, then doing something else, cleaning a pond, and then constructing a dam, and whatever is being done. Just to give an idea of what is the coverage, it covers the entire country in 3 phases. And then we have, and also just to highlight an opportunity that the pipe to water supply coverage on an average in India is only 30–40% now. So that means people basically depend on other sources and other modalities for drinking. So that means there is a real chance that to link with MUS so that it actually adds to water security in the rural India. And then this is a Kerala case which Kerala has got one of the best globally known decentralized framework in different structures like that. The district, then we have the block at the other level, and then we have the Gram Panchayat or village at the 3-tier system of Kerala. And then all this planning is based essentially on the watershed. So there are clear-cut guidelines issued by the government, any plan for the panchayat, and actually it's around, and around 30% of our resources have been devolved to the local government for a Gram Panchayat. And so the entire budget, 30% of our entire budget of government is actually going to the local government for their own planning and everything. And then we have a 5-year annual work plan and budget created. And then every village there is a GIS-based resource mapping done, and technical support mechanisms are also available for design, execution, and quality. And we have a women livelihood sort of a poverty eradication program. It is called Kudumbashri, and it is very vibrant. And looking at the NREGA, 95% of the employment created is basically for women, not by men. And that was again another feature. So I will just focus on 2 success stories. One is on an open well recharge program for water security in Kerala using NREGA as an opportunity. And second one is a irrigation canal system where we have cleaned it and then done it for just the district where it is done, you can see that the groundwater potential, it's overexploited in one of block and semi-critical in other areas. This shows again the seasonality of the water bodies. So depending on the it's not perennial in any of the areas. And then the saline factor, because of the coastline, salinity intrusion is actually happening on a faster pace because of the groundwater is extracted in a big way. And then actually this is something like a tanker lorry supply. Wherever there is a scarcity, immediately the government provides. There's a big Toby also behind the tanker lorry supply. And what we did is that we have provided many sort of a technology choices, even for a thatched house to concrete house, which will catch roof water and then just recharge the open wells, linking the employment available and materials available from the NREGA. And this is typically what we have done in a particular coastline. You can see all this side is sea, and there is a small sort of an island which is totally saline intrusion. And these recharge actually helped in changing the water quality. You can see that after 1 year, actually, independent audit actually shows that. And then the key outcomes are like that. Around 10,000 open wells are recharged in one district with this type of modality. And the government of Kerala actually announced a water security plan focusing on conservation and preservation of these old structures. And then it also leads to this convergence of different departments, institutionalize the PRIs and government of Kerala district planning. We have a district planning mechanism, in very, very active district planning mechanism in Kerala, and national regional media, so that the program actually got larger attention within the country and also outside. And this is the second case of a dam which was constructed in 1962 to cater to around 10 points. It's not a very big dam, 9 square kilometer paddy cultivation. It was rendered useless for many years. It has never been done. But the advantage is that the local community determine the priority. So they will sit together, identify the project, they will plan accordingly, they will prepare the work plan and everything and labor budget, and they will do it. Around 90% of the total resources are to be on wage, maybe 10% to 15% actually goes to materials from that. But we could clean with using this convergence mechanism around, it's a very small project with 4.7 million wage employment rupees created, and labor budget and work plan prepared, generated employment for 2,259 workers and completed in 25 days. So it started as irrigation actually and recharged open well, because as Steph was saying, when the canal was opened and water is flowing, actually because of the intensity of open wells from both sides, it actually gets recharged indirectly into the drinking water. Thing. So this is something, thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you very much, Kurian, for a completely different way how MUS actually starts happening. And I think some of the work from IMI showed that I think in the NREGA, in some other states, I think in Madhya Pradesh and in Gujarat, like 80% of the water assets that were developed or rehabilitated were actually for multiple uses. So if you see those amounts and you know that 50% of that goes into water-related assets, and if 80% of that is for multiple use, you can imagine that the scale of that impact is quite high. So it's a completely different route towards multiple use, and the scale is just mind-boggling. I would say.
And half of Europe has has paid labor. 40 million people.
Yeah, it's crazy, but I would also recommend some of the studies done by IMI that dig a bit further into what this means and the type of assets that are there. I know we are a little bit over time, but if you're interested, we can maybe take another 10 minutes or so to discuss these different types of entry points, from the NREGA work to the more domestic plus, which I think is more our comfort zone, to the 3 different type of entry points for scaling up that John was mentioning for Ethiopia. Maybe some general reflections on what this means for how we can scale up some of the work on those. Just to open. You have a meeting also. Okay, then I suggest that those who want to leave now for other meetings, we can leave, and those who want to continue discussing a little bit more, we stay here until let's say 12:30.
If anything specific on this particular thing, I can just 1 minute or any points, anything to me. I hope.
Okay. Then I thank you very much, Kurian, for great presentation. And then I open the overall discussion until, let's say, 12:30 or so. Inge, you want to? Yes. In fact, the whole webinar is shared, so everything you say.
Even the spilling of the coffee, it will be online.
Yeah. So the presentations plus the whole discussion around it will be made available online. Yeah. Thank you, Kurian. So any questions, any observations, any reflections on these different pathways for scaling and what it means for our work? I see you looking very puzzled, Christoph.
I'm trying to think, which I don't want to be shown online. It is again very different pathways and very different things, and it's again what we said on the decentralization meeting on Tuesday. I mean, any of these and many others will have to combine because it's very contextualized. And water is already contextualized. Then if you go into productive uses and then the history of that of food production in countries and so on, you then have a complete different setup in different countries and the governmental setting. India, it's amazing that of the difference where the investment comes from, not only the scale but the capacity of the state to invest, to be once there is a good idea to take over and just take it up to scale directly. It's so different. That I think all of the presentations show the variety, and we need to share that widely, and all of us be aware of the way it has been done in different countries. I think it's very difficult to narrow it down.
Yeah, and I think and maybe this is also where we can maybe get some input from Sarah, because I think this is exactly what we have been struggling with. You talk to various constituencies, typical domestic water supply agency, irrigation agencies, even to the government department responsible for labor in the case of India, different countries. Still, we want to have very clear messages, and I think that is where we have been struggling with. So maybe, Sarah, would you like to come in and share some of your thoughts, having seen all of this, on what this could mean for messaging and communication around this? And don't forget to unmute.
Hi, Steph.
Hi.
I'm not, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Stuff? Oh, sorry. Yeah, you're kind of putting me on the spot here. I'm not sure that I have any real clear, really clear recommendations at this point, but I think, you know, it is going to be getting the different groups that are working together on MUS and, you know, kind of looking at how we can enhance each other's outreach efforts. And, you know, I mean, the overall messaging really to be effective has to be very targeted. And I think that, you know, the overall messages, the sort of big picture messages that apply across the board are fairly clear, but can probably be made much clearer. But then it's going to be a matter of, you know, how do you then adapt those slightly for different audiences to appeal to their interests and to make MUS something that that will work for them.
Yeah, and I think I think that's maybe a bit where probably the overarching messages we need to polish them and sharpen them, I think, for an international audience. But then when you take them to the country level, I think that is where the real adaptation takes place. And I must say that to me, what was one of the key benefits of having done that study, for the scoping studies for the Rockefeller, I think that provided us for the first time with a clearer framework to really identify, until the level of detail that Marike presented and that John presented, different modalities, because then you can start speaking more clearly to it. And I think it's now also the proposal that we use that same methodology, that same framework, for example, in Uganda, and maybe there's even also something to consider in Burkina Faso. So I think, yeah, that helps already differentiating, not putting MUS on one big pile, but having at least the 4 modalities and even their sub-modalities, thinking of them in terms of service delivery models may help already differentiating the message a bit. I see, Yo, you have another question.
Yeah, I have a point, because you are now struggling, you said, or your aim is to have scaling up internationally, getting recognition amongst the development partners and the agencies working at that level, and also nationally and locally. And I think, and Sarah can help definitely in that, that we need brief 2-pager, 4-pager advocacy documents that give that message very clearly. Not to go into details, but also showing that there is enough evidence behind what you're stating, and because they are not interested so much in all the details, those policymakers, those ones at the other side of the road, as we say these days. But you would like to know that it is not a new area, that it has evidence of what you're saying. And in that respect, I think it's good to emphasize again the role of the national government, but a limited role. Let's be very clear on what that role could be in different settings, probably, and how they could take it up. And that goes particularly to accepting, recognizing, MUS in the policy, in the strategy, and in the guidelines, but not expecting them to do much more than that, and leaving it to the local government or to extension workers and to NGOs or community-based organizations to take it up further. That's one. In terms of advocacy at the other side, I think STEP is aware that we are thinking about, with Dutch NGOs and private sector, having a series, a series of mini seminars, one-day seminars, to bring in innovative developments in the wash sector, and that includes integrated water resource management sector. To bring that to the agencies here in the Netherlands. And I think MUS should be one of those topic subjects for such a one day or half a day seminar. using some of the presentations, but probably a bit more focused because you're not talking there with sector people necessarily. They can also be NGO people who have a little bit on voice, but more looking at it from a community development perspective or school education perspective.
Yeah, no, I think that second invitation, I think we should accept, and maybe we can definitely share the scoping studies that were done in at least the countries where also the Dutch Watch Alliance has an interest. Yes.
Yeah, I'm currently working on developing a tutorial on LCCA, and I think it would maybe be nice to add a session on in the second module on the use of LCA on the use of LCCA within MUS, because I think you could explain the guidelines that Marieke developed. You could add the movie that you showed, so we could quite easily develop a session on MUS, and then within the framework, ways that you could use LCCA, for example, in MUS, you could do this.
Or I would rather say it the other way around, how to add a MUS lens to when you do LCCA, because I think that is the main thing, that when you do an LCCA, you not only look at what are the costs of the basic service level, but what are also the costs of the higher levels of service.
I think we can quite easily add a session on that, and I can contact you guys to see how to do that, because I think there's enough information there to do that. Okay.
Maybe, John, from your side, you have been one of the earliest champions around MUS. Maybe some reflections on how to take this further.
Yeah, well, I think maybe two things. At country level, I think the challenge is huge, and it's like replicating the whole great work of the MUS group at country level. I just need to get from the point of just having an interesting concept in Ethiopia and some champions, but for this being something that's really applied at any kind of scale. It's a huge effort that's needed, and yeah, we've been working on this for what, 10 years? Mm-hmm. At the international level, which in a sense is easy because it's much more defined and people receptive to these kind of new ideas and so on. So that's huge. Of course, we'll do our best. We take it on in Ethiopia and elsewhere. And it's made easier by having great materials from the group and so on. In terms of what the group is doing, yeah, I think partly it is boiling stuff down to the kind of 2 pages as you're always talking about. And of course, we can always have those and have better ones. We have had those from the beginning, of course. Of course, we can have better ones now because there's a bit more evidence to base them on. But I still think there is a big need for a couple of things. One is the more credible research that's, the good credible research, like the kind of the results you presented from Kenya and Senegal. But there'll be need for more of that, especially more around where there's planned attempts to introduce MUS. And then I think what we really lack is, and another on the research side as well, is it's the point I've made many times about it's great that Winrock and others are taking this into implementation programs, and like UNICEF that I presented in Ethiopia and so on. But I think there's a real risk that won't be documented properly and won't be used to inform the what's happening. We don't see a lot of research happening on those implementation programs at the moment. Even the ones that have been going a few years, we don't see so much coming back from them in terms of lessons. And of course, that work is the less interesting to look at things, study them, particularly the things that haven't worked. It's less interesting than getting the new money for the next big project. And I think that's a bit of a challenge the MUS group should take. It's sort of hard work, and maybe less glamorous work, but it needs to be done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think on that last point, we were discussing yesterday also in our Latin America regional program meeting that sometimes we are also waiting a bit for external money to do studies, but maybe this actually, I'm thinking now, for example, Wawash, which has a MUS component, but where, as John says, it is very likely they will do the MUS work, but they will not document the MUS work adequately. maybe that is something, I don't know whether in the scope of WAWASH or the broader Burkina Faso program, it would be possible to do some of that documentation. I don't know what the frameworks are and the possibilities are for that.
I was thinking about it. I mean, we as IRC have the overall responsibility in WAWASH for knowledge management, which means there will be some interaction directly with those that are doing the MUS part of the job. But it's essentially on the knowledge sharing and not really on studying, analyzing what is being done. And so we can collect the information that is of what is happening, so at least that will be documented. But if we want to take the next step, which is making a research and analysis on it, there is currently not the capacity, I think, within WAWASH in general, nor within the IRC part of WAWASH to do that. Maybe there's the MUS project, which is something else, which is being funded at the moment, and maybe there, I don't know it, you can both study what you, do your action research program, and use the opportunity to go and see the other MUS activities within WAWASH.
Or even with the PGIS funds from the Burkina Faso program, depend a bit of the scale and the magnitude, because I think that is probably the only way out to make sure that happens. So maybe that is something for the Burkina program to consider. Okay. Any other observations?
Perhaps UNICEF is scared to document their experiences. I often feel that because their programs are not always successful. But that's with all programs, I think. And as we have learned since 1970, early 70s, I think, a lot on hand pumps. We are still learning on hand pumps. And we are more than 40 years further down the line. So let's also look at the failures that we had in MUS, and let's learn also from those failures.
Yeah. No, definitely, and I can imagine, as John was saying, well, there is in the Ethiopia program around MUS, there are many question marks, and probably good things will happen, probably failures will happen. So again, maybe within the Ethiopia program, if it doesn't come straight from UNICEF, maybe there is other resources with the DGIS funds to do some studies to accompany it. And maybe once you start documenting something on your own initiative with your own funds, that may trigger some further interest for more in-depth research. So maybe for John and Inge to consider. And maybe even in the case of Ghana with the limited mechanical schemes, I don't know whether in the context of SSS or in the DGIS component of the Ghana program, there are these opportunities.
If we include it, not as building block, but if we try to link the sustainability issue, and I think it could make sense within the SSS framework to say, well, let's study if that would bring, because that was one of your research questions. I would see it as something that could be integrated.
We have actually been doing it. On a very limited scale, we just sneaked in a couple of questions about multiple use when we were doing the baseline data collection. So
that's also, but I think it needs to be taken a step further, probably including the cost, the willingness to pay. How does that change the willingness to pay? How does it change
chicken egg relation?
Viability as well.
Yeah. The chicken egg situation.
Watch List India collected lots of information on. I think we have lots of data and information. Yeah.
Okay. Good. So I think maybe then it is for the Ghana team also to formulate a bit of a more consolidated package of work around that. among all the other areas of research that you have already prioritized.
Maybe that's for, let's say, early next year.
Sure.
Because I don't think
You don't need to start tomorrow.
Everything that's ongoing at the moment, but certainly to start have a consolidated proposal by early next year, then we can see in the course of the continuation we can fund it.
Okay, I think on that I would like to close. For me it was very useful to get your feedback, and I think it has triggered, at least to me, some further thinking on how we link multiple use with the broader service delivery approach messages. I hope it has also been useful for you to get a bit of a feeling of some of the new work on MUS that has happened over the last couple of years. As I said, the PowerPoint and also the discussion will be made available on the part of the website where all the webinars are stored. And with that, I would like to thank you very much.